The sports world has once again been struck with the weight of loss, as news broke that former NFL linebacker Dean Wells has passed away at the age of 54. For those who knew him, whether personally, professionally, or even just as a face and name they watched on Sunday afternoons, this loss isn't just a passing headline. It's the silence that follows after a fierce storm, a moment that makes you stop and breathe a little deeper. For 9 seasons, Dean Wells made a name for himself on the football field. But off the field, he was a fighter of a different kind, a father, a husband, a friend, and toward the end, a quiet warrior battling something far more insidious than any opponent he faced in the NFL. Carolina Panthers, one of the teams Dean proudly suited up for during his career, confirmed the heartbreaking news on Friday. The world may have known Dean as a linebacker, a relentless defensive force, but those closest to him knew him as a man who never backed down from a challenge, no matter how steep. In 2023, Dean received a diagnosis that would change the trajectory of his life: acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a form of cancer that affects the blood and bone marrow, striking fast and hitting hard. It wasn't something he could prepare for like he would a game. There were no playbooks, no defensive schemes, no way to predict the next move. And for a man who made a living anticipating his opponent's actions before they happened, this was unfamiliar and terrifying territory. He underwent a bone marrow transplant in May of 2024. It was a grueling process, and one that tested every fiber of strength and patience in his body. Through it all, Dean remained remarkably grounded. He spoke about his fight with cancer in a raw and emotional interview with Kentucky Sports Radio, baring his soul to a public that only ever knew the stoic face behind the helmet. He described the disease not as something to be conquered in the traditional sense, but as a war that had to be entrusted to a higher power. "Show me who to tackle and I can do that," Wells said. "This is in the doctor's hands and it's in God's hands." It was a moment that stuck with many. A professional athlete used to controlling his every move, suddenly stripped of all control and left to place his faith entirely in something beyond himself. It wasn't defeatist. It was honest. And it was Dean. Dean Wells wasn't just a name on a jersey. He wasn't just a set of stats. He was born on July 20, 1970, and grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. Football found him early. Or maybe he found football. Either way, it was a bond that never let go. At Holy Cross High School, he was a standout, strong, fast, focused. He took that talent to the University of Kentucky, where his college career continued to grow brick by brick. Teammates say he was the kind of player who didn't need to scream or shout to be heard. He led by presence. He led by heart. In 1993, the Seattle Seahawks saw what so many others already knew and drafted Dean in the 4th round. He was never the flashiest player on the field, but he was dependable, solid, relentless, kind of guy who made big plays without needing big praise. He spent 6 seasons in Seattle, becoming a cornerstone of the defense. Then in 1999, he made the move to the Carolina Panthers, where he would play out the final 3 seasons of his professional career. 2 for 9 seasons in the NFL, Dean Wells delivered every ounce of himself to the game he loved. Over his career, he racked up 529 total tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 6 forced fumbles, numbers that only tell a fraction of his story. Because Dean's true value never came from the box score, came from the locker room presence. The veteran voice, the guy who kept calm when the pressure mounted. He wasn't just there for the big moments, he was there for the quiet ones. The ones that often go unnoticed but are the real glue that holds a team together. The stories that have begun to pour out since his passing reflect just that. Former teammates recalling how Dean always had their back, how he gave advice without ego, how he reminded the young guys that the NFL wasn't just about money or fame, it was about the grind, the discipline, the unrelenting desire to show up for yourself and your brothers on the field. But there's a side of Dean Wells that fans rarely got to see, a side that existed far away from the stadium lights and Sunday highlights. That side was reserved for his family, for the moments when the cleats were off and the helmet was stored away. Dean was a devoted husband to his wife, Lisa. Together, they built a life rooted in love, respect, and partnership. Through all of life's twists, the relocations, the surgeries, the long nights, the quiet mornings, they stood side by side. And as Dean's health declined, Lisa became not only his emotional anchor but his fiercest advocate. Friends close to the family have said that her strength during this chapter was a reflection of Dean's own spirit, the quiet courage that never wavered, even when the days grew darker. Dean and Lisa also raised 2 sons, young men who carry their father's legacy not only in name but in spirit. One Dean wasn't just dad, he was their coach, their mentor, their protector. He taught them how to throw a football, sure, but more importantly, he taught them how to stand tall in a world that doesn't always make it easy. He taught them resilience, humility, and above all, how to lead with love. Losing a father is never easy. Losing a father like Dean Wells, who embodied everything a man should be, is a pain that words can scarcely touch. But even in their grief, there is pride. 'Cause they know what kind of man they had. They know what kind of love he gave. And they know that everything he poured into them will continue to echo long after the memorials fade. Cancer is a cruel opponent. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about your trophies or your accolades. It doesn't care about the years you've spent taking care of your body or your mind. It comes in swift, unexpected, and ruthless. But if there was anyone who could face it with the same quiet power that once made him feared on the field, it was Dean. And though this battle ended in loss, it was not without victories. Victories in the form of small moments, days he got to spend with his family, laughs he still managed to share, lessons he continued to teach. Those moments are victories cancer can never take. As news of his death spreads, tributes have come flooding in. From former teammates, NFL insiders, fans, friends, and even those who only knew him in passing. Everyone seems to echo the same sentiment. Dean Wells was a good man. A rare kind of man. Kind you don't come across often, and once you do, you don't forget. There's something sacred about athletes like Dean, players who don't chase fame or spotlight but rather purpose. Integrity. Brotherhood. He played the game with his heart on his sleeve, and he lived life with the same passion. Sometimes life has a way of reminding us of what really matters. It's not the accolades. It's not the stats. It's not the job title or the size of your house. It's the people you love. People who love you back. Quiet courage with which you face the unknown. Dean Wells reminded us of that. In the way he fought. In the way he loved. In the way he lived. His story may now be complete, but its impact is far from over. Those who knew him will carry his memory like a badge of honor. And those who are only now learning of him will see, through the tributes and the memories, that this man was more than a football player. He was a symbol of resilience, humility, and grace under pressure. Dean Wells leaves behind his wife, Lisa, and their 2 sons, who now inherit not only his name but the legacy of his strength. One they will feel his presence in every football thrown, every lesson passed down, every memory revisited. And while the world mourns, we also remember. We remember a life that meant something. A life that touched others. A life that, even in its final chapter, refused to surrender to fear.